Numerous philosophies have been created since humanity has tamed fire. Some of them have gone viral and people follow them even today. Let's look at them. First is Stoicism. Stoicism is an ancient Greek philosophy that tells you if you feel like eating a donut after you've just had a pretzel, don't. It teaches the development of self-control and fortitude as a means to overcome destructive emotions. While your thoughts and emotions are there to work with you in your favor and help you navigate the social world, sometimes an emotion can pull out the gun and shoot itself. That's when you become dead inside. Stoicism teaches you how to not let that happen. It was founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BCE, but didn't finish it out of laziness. Later it was expanded by philosophers such as Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. For Stoics, the ultimate goal in life is to achieve eudaimonia, often translated as a good life. And eudaimonia is attained by living in accordance with virtue, which is the highest good. But what the hell is the highest good? Virtue for Stoics is composed of 4 cardinal qualities: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Wisdom involves knowing what is good and bad. It means knowing not to put tomato in fruit salad. Courage is the ability to act rightly in the face of danger or pain. Justice involves treating others fairly and with respect, and word is that Batman is still seeking it. Temperance is the self-discipline to avoid excesses, like not banking yourself to death. Stoicism works on a fundamental flaw, that humans are rational beings. As rational beings, they should live in harmony with nature and reason. This means accepting the natural order of things and understanding that certain events are beyond our control. This is known as dichotomy of control, which distinguishes between what is within our control and what is not. Things within our control include our thoughts, actions, and responses. Things outside our control include external events, other people's actions, and outcomes. As this guy chose to get slapped for every slap he gets. Stoics advise focusing on things we can control and accepting what we cannot control with equanimity, which means to not give a fuck. It teaches that destructive emotions like anger, envy, and fear arise from errors in judgment and irrational beliefs. These emotions are seen as disturbances that cloud rational thinking. Stoics don't believe in therapy and advocate for the development of rational control over emotions through the practice of mindfulness. By changing the way we perceive situations, we can change our emotional responses. Here's how Stoics practice Stoicism. Premeditation malorum, which means premeditation of evils. They sit down and contemplate all the potential bad stuff in advance, which prepares them to face difficult situations with equanimity. Memento mori. Memento mori means remember to die. Since people are prone to traveling back to the future, Stoics regularly remind themselves of their mortality to focus on things that truly matter in life and to live fully in the present moment. And finally, voluntary discomfort to build resilience. That's why you see them ribbed in the statues. They're regularly polished with protein. Existentialism. Existentialism answers the question of why do we exist. It has been argued for centuries, but don't worry. Your decisions to binge watch cat videos is at the pinnacle of human existence. One of the foundational ideas in existentialism is that existence precedes essence. This means that humans first exist without any predetermined purpose, or essence as they like to call it, and it is through living and making choices that they create their own meaning and identity. So apparently we all just show up in the world like unassembled IKEA furniture, no instructions, no purpose, just a whole lot of loose screws. And it's up to us to figure out what the heck we are supposed to do. Existentialists emphasize the freedom of individuals to make choices. With great freedom, however, comes great responsibility. Since there are no predetermined guidelines or universal values, as an individual, you are responsible for creating your own values. And then you get the Bible as your 5th birthday present. This freedom can lead to something called the existential angst, which comes from the realization that if you screw it up, that's on you. Existentialists like Albert Camus argued that life has no inherent meaning, but rather than leading to despair, this realization they thought can be liberating, allowing them to live authentically and embrace life on their own terms, as we all do working 9 to 5. They also explore alienation, the modern day procrastination method. Who doesn't remember being in a party with a room full of people and having more in common with the Wi-Fi router than other people? This sense of isolation is tied to the recognition that despite social connections and cultural norms, each individual is ultimately alone in making sense of their existence, which is what they said before rejecting me from the high school football team. Utilitarianism. Utilitarianism allows us to finally move away from just embracing suffering and focus on maximizing happiness and pleasure. Finally, someone thought of that. The central idea of utilitarianism is the greatest happiness principle, which suggests that an action is right if it promotes the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people and if it leads to a favorable balance of happiness over suffering, which is why Mario eats mushrooms. It says that one person cannot be more happy than someone else because it requires that each person's happiness counts equally. No one's happiness is considered more important than anyone else's, which Stalin took way too seriously. There are 2 approaches. act and rule utilitarianism. You take an action which has consequences, and act utilitarianism assesses those consequences to determine its moral worth. The second approach gives you a set of rules, and it is believed that following those rules blindly will lead to greatest utility and better outcomes in the long run, because assessing individuals' actions is tedious. You can't just go to every person and ask about their actions and the results. But happiness and pleasure has to be defined, otherwise we'll end up in a world where syringes are easier to find in the streets than hospitals. John Stuart Mill, one of the founders of this philosophy, introduced the concept of higher and lower pleasures. Higher pleasures involve intellectual and moral faculties like reading, artistic appreciation, and thinking naked, while lower pleasures involve bodily sensations such as eating and resting. Haters say that it is difficult, if not impossible, to measure and compare the pleasures and pains of different people in a precise and objective way. And they're not wrong, happiness being subjective and all. Platonism. Once upon a time, the ancient Greek philosopher Plato came up with a few ideas. 9 months later, he gave birth to Platonism. Plato used his big ancient brain and came up with the theory of forms, which is central to this philosophy. He said that there are two worlds: the physical world that we interact with using our senses, then there's a higher non-physical realm that contains eternal forms or ideas. These forms are the true reality, and all the objects in our world, including women, are merely imperfect copies of these ideal forms. For example, the concept of beauty is itself a form. A beautiful painting or person gives a representation of the form of beauty but does not fully embody it. If you don't fully get it, it's fine. This can be better understood with Plato's allegory or the story of the cave. There are prisoners chained in a dark cave. All of them are facing a wall. There's a fire behind them, and hiding behind this wall holding objects are Assassin's Creed fans cosplaying and casting shadow of objects on the wall. For the prisoners, these shadows are the only reality. Whatever they did was so wicked that they were sentenced to stare at a wall. One sneaky bastard escapes and after a difficult journey reaches the outside world, where he sees true forms of the objects that were casting shadows. He realizes that the shadows were mere illusions and that the true reality is outside the cave, like he couldn't see his own hand. Here the cave is the physical world that we live in, and the outside world is the realm of the forms. Plato believed that the soul is immortal and has knowledge of the forms before being reincarnated in a human body. Basically, soul is like a cloud server, and learning is just downloading information from the cloud to your local machine that is your body. The soul already graduated from Soul's Varsity before entering the physical world, and he divides the soul in three parts. Rational part, responsible for decision making and doing calculus. The spirited part, associated with emotions like anger and courage, which supports the rational part in maintaining order. Appetite part, the lowest part, which is concerned with physical desires and pleasures. He also decided to get his hands dirty and get into politics, where he described the ideal state to be divided in three parts, similar to the soul, where rulers are the rational part and possess all the wisdom, guardians are the spirited part and help enforce the ruler's decisions, and producers, being the lowest part of all, are responsible for producing goods and services. Therefore, in Platonism, true knowledge comes from the intellect and understanding of the forms, rather than from sensory experience. Then came Aristotle, student of Plato who decided to go on a different path than Plato. I don't think he liked him very much. Unlike Plato, who focused on the dimension of forms that cannot be seen, Aristotle liked to see and focused on observation and verifiable experiences and the study of natural phenomena. One of the core concepts of Aristotelianism is metaphysics, which is centered on the concept of substance. This is not the kind of substance that you can abuse. A substance is a combination of matter or physical material and form or essence. For example, a tree is a substance and its matter is wood, leaves, and roots, and its form is the essential nature that makes it a tree. According to him, everything in the world is composed of both matter and form. Unlike Plato, who was a little bit woo-woo up his mind and discarded every sensory experience, Aristotle believed that knowledge begins with sensory experience, which provides the raw data for the intellect to process. Aristotle, therefore, is more logical than Plato and is often credited with founding logic. He was digging a cave once and there it was, buried 17 feet deep in the soil, logic which he found. For Aristotle, reason is what distinguishes humans from other animals, and it plays a central role in achieving a good life. A virtuous life is one lived in accordance with reason, and this involves both intellectual contemplation and moral action. Empiricism, which is very similar to what Aristotle was doing, was introduced by John Locke. He said that all our ideas come from observation, experience, and experimentation of the ideas and knowledge. It emphasizes the role of sensory experience and that a newborn kid is essentially empty up top and therefore dumb as hell. Then as he grows up and interacts with the world, even if the world doesn't want to interact with him, he acquires knowledge through sensory experiences. Then George Berkeley came along and said, learning from experience is good and all, but to be is to be perceived. That's what he said. Trust me, I was there. To be is to be perceived means that objects only exist when they are perceived by a mind, and that reality is composed solely of minds and their ideas. Therefore, if you don't like someone, lock them in the freezer and forget about them. Science is empirical in nature, where we first make a guess, observe, and experiment.
In general, we look for new law by the following process. First, we guess it.
It's also used in psychology, where you observe behaviors instead of looking at internal mental states. Education, where you'll carefully observe that you'll never use trigonometry in your life. And medicine, you observe if a medicine worked well or killed the person, in which case it didn't work. Rationalism. Empiricism might sound very rational, but it's different than rationalism. Empiricists believe that knowledge is dependent on experience, and without sensory input, the mind cannot generate ideas or knowledge on its own. Then rationalists come along and say, come on, be rational. They believe the opposite, that knowledge is independent of experience and can be known by just sitting and doing nothing. They say that certain concepts such as mathematics and logics do not require sensory experience to be understood. They require 12 years of stay at the concentration camps. Rationalists say that some ideas are already inherent within us. René Descartes, a rational guy, argued that the concept of God and the principle of mathematics are innate ideas. We just need to stick our hands deep down our throat and rip our hearts out to find them. They often use methods of doubt and strip away beliefs that could be false. Descartes famously used systematic doubt to arrive at the certainty of his own existence. I think, therefore I am, as the first principle of his philosophy. When he is not thinking, he has a lot in common with John Cena. He and many other rationalists advocate for dualism. The mind or soul and the body or matter. The mind is seen as a seat of reason, which is where I sit in the morning and think about new ideas. While empiricism has been the dominant approach in modern science, rationalism has played a significant role in the development of theoretical frameworks, especially in mathematics and physics. Basically, they use mathematics to understand the world, because there's no point in physically going out in the world and seeing it. The Greek alphabets cover pretty much everything. Finally, we have humanism. It places humans at the center of its worldview, works well for the attention seekers. Humanists believe in the inherent worth of each individual, that each person has a cost and can be bought. They have the potential for humans to shape their own destinies, which is what the self-help culture is selling. Humanism celebrates the achievements of humanity. If a human mixes colors in funky manner that does not resemble anything but the person's failure to get along with other humans, they celebrate. If they find out all the planets in our solar system, even though no one has any plan of visiting, or if a person elegantly describes the color of the door, again, they celebrate. It's the reason why we have Christmas. Humanism is closely associated with the Renaissance revival of the classical Greek and Roman texts, ideas, and values, and they like to study what the people who died were up to. While many humanists were religious, they emphasized the importance of focusing on human life and experience rather than solely on divine matters. In ethics, it emphasizes the importance of human welfare, social justice, and the pursuit of common good. It stresses that humans are self-governed and should make use of the human qualities once in a while, such as reason, empathy, and compassion, to create a just society. While humanism is often associated with secularism, there's also a tradition of religious humanism that seeks to integrate humanist values with religious beliefs. They believe religion can be a source of inspiration and guidance while still emphasizing human dignity and reason. Secular humanism is explicitly non-religious. They see themselves as being better than religious humanists because they do science. They say that the church and the state should be separate and the society should be governed by the principles of fairness, equality, and justice. At its core, Western philosophy seeks to explore and understand the fundamental nature of reality, knowledge, and human existence, providing a rich tapestry of ideas that continue to inspire and challenge thinkers today.